most of the time, our brains run narratives over and over again, and we're not aware of it, that we are so often not mindful. We're just playing the tape that's inside of us. And if we stop and we think about what is that tape, we can change what that is.
My name is Dr. Sarah King. One of the things I like to examine in my research are health outcomes. So I really love to look at the biopsychosocial model of health and medicine that talks about the way in which our biology or our physiology, our psychology and our mental health and our relationships are all completely intertwined. There are certain stresses that we might consider to be like totally normal during a course of one's like daily life, like, just like crossing the street and having to like evade traffic or something like that, right? The body's stress response comes online. This system was developed inside of our bodies tens of thousands of years ago when the threat that we had was actually being eaten alive by some sort of like apex predator, right? But the threats that we have to encounter today are mostly social in nature, right? And so what's interesting about that is we have this ancient nervous system that is coming online and responding literally as though our lives were being threatened, but the context of what is happening is stress.
The brain, even though it's only 2 to 3% of your body weight, uses 20 to 25% of the oxygen and glucose in your bloodstream. Why would Mother Nature have evolved such a metabolically expensive organ? Well, it's because its function, and the function of the nervous system in general, is to process information. To keep our ancestors alive in harsh conditions, the brain evolved what scientists call a negativity bias, so that negative, painful, stressful, hurtful, anxious experiences tend to rapidly leave lasting physical traces behind in altered neural structure and function. Meanwhile, beneficial experiences of gratitude, compassion, happiness, they're not privileged in that way, and they just wash through the brain, typically.
My name is Paul Conti, and I am a physician and a psychiatrist who has been practicing for 20 years. And one of the many things I do in the world is take care of other people and try and help us understand what goes on in all of us that can make us miserable, and to help us understand ourselves so that we can make ourselves better and the people we care about better and the societies that we live in better. What happens in our bodies occurs because of what the brain is telling us, or how the brain is perceiving what's going on in our bodies. So for example, if we're under a lot of distress, we become what's called hypervigilant. So we can become so focused on our bodies that we end up sensing pain, for example, where there isn't pain. And so much of the time, we're not aware of what's going on inside of us.
I'm Zev Schumann-Olivier. I am the director for the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion here at Cambridge Health Alliance. I'm an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Psychiatry. Mindfulness and compassion can be really helpful with avoiding this fight, flight, or freeze response. What we're doing is learning how to be able to stay present with the sensations in the body as they arise in mindfulness, and not react to what the experience is. Because what happens is you start to have a response. You have a thought, you see something, you have an emotion, and then there's this cascade of experience that happens internally. And before you know it, you have this like giant wave inside, and it takes time for it to calm down. We did a study with self-compassion where we looked at how people responded to self-criticism and trying to understand the ways that the brain might change. The way this task worked was people were in the scanner, and we had them think about times in their lives where they fell short. And people would spend a few moments recollecting about those experiences, and then we'd ask them to be either self-critical or self-reassuring. And then what we were able to look at by comparing that is what's happening in the brain when we're engaged in self-criticism. And we saw some of the areas of the brain that are very common in thoughts about others and thoughts about ourselves emerge in the brain. But what was most interesting, I think, was that they reported less self-criticism post-training than they had pre-training. And that change actually related to shifts in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So this is an area involved in emotion regulation. So they had increased activation there. They also had increased activation in their insula. It was linked to this kind of increased experience of the body. So the way that we interpreted that is that at least 2 weeks of self-compassion training actually changed the way that people were relating to these events. And it changed it in ways that allowed them to potentially downregulate their self-critical mind and be able to potentially evoke, perhaps in the body even, a kinder response to themselves.
As science deepens our understanding of our body's stress responses, it also helps us discover practices and tools that enable us to manage those stress responses in skillful ways. One of the most effective tools to come out of these discoveries is a practice that wisdom traditions have taught for centuries: mindfulness, being aware in the present moment without judgment.
It's interesting, right, how much of the world around us talks about mindfulness, right? That's because we are not very mindful. Most of the time, our brains run narratives over and over again, and we're not aware of it, that we are so often not mindful. We're just playing the tape that's inside of us. And if we stop and we think about what is that tape, we can change what that is.
When we're constantly rushing and running around and in a state of reactivity, it's pretty much impossible to bring a sense of awareness and presence to how it is that we are behaving and in relationship with one another. So it's a lot easier to dismiss someone, to be mean or rude or unkind or even violent to another person when you are actually not engaging in being present in your own body, right? And that's part of the reason why mindfulness practices can be so effective, because the vast majority of the instructions are geared around helping us to slow down, to connect with, well, what am I even present to in this experience of this moment?
The way I define mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness. This ability to have the mind be like a mirror that just reflects what's in front of it without any embellishment. It's just seeing things as they are. It was just a natural progression for me to be able to master that idea of meditation. And so on a basic level, I need an assist from a philosopher by the name of Dr. Dre. And he has a song where he says, I have my mind on money, money on my mind. At the basic level, that's meditation. Whatever your mind is on, that's what you're meditating on. And so a lot of us think that meditation is just sitting and just being still and silent. That's very important. But at the same time, all day long, whatever thoughts we are entertaining, we're creating that habit, that mental habit, and that mental energy has a consequence.
There's a traditional saying that your mind takes its shape from what it dwells upon, for better or worse. The modern update, based on what we know about the brain, would be that your brain takes its shape from what your mind dwells upon. One of the major approaches to this is summarized in this saying: neurons that fire together, wire together. In other words, one way that we learn from our experiences is if two different neurons or collections of neurons are firing very, very close to the same time. And if they're firing very, very close to the same time, structures start to emerge that begin to link them more together.
It all starts with stopping and looking at ourselves and saying, how did I get here and what's going on inside of my brain? What am I telling myself about me and about the world around me?
One major way we can help ourselves is to not dwell in the negative. I want to be really clear here. I don't mean ignoring painful experiences or turning a blind eye to the suffering of other people. But what I do mean is that if we are hijacked by our anger or our fear or our hurt or our sadness, if we're hijacked by it, if we're identified with it, if we're just flooded by it, that gets reinforced in the brain because of the negativity bias. So one thing we can do, as soon as we start to experience pain, suffering, we can, as a teacher of mine, Gil Fronsdal, once put it, I stop for suffering, my own and others. We can pause and hold it in a space of mindfulness.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily life classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way, your way.